de terre sur sa bouche. Voilà le portrait sans retouche de l'homme auquel j'appartiens. Quand il me prend dans...
France's economy was held in high esteem until the destruction of World War I tore it to pieces. President Raymond Poincaré reveals the standard France held for the world when he announces, "They have given to the world the example of a great nation which, definitely raised from defeat by the exercise of will, patience, and labor, has only used its renewed and rejuvenated strength in the interest of progress and for the good of humanity." The way President Poincaré and the rest of the people viewed France quickly changed after the war. Before the war, the population of France flourished, but at the end of the war, the population of the main battle zone had been reduced by 57%, and half the men aged between 19 and 32, and many non-combatants had died. A third of the dead left widows and orphans. Prior to World War I, France had created and maintained a great economy that set the standard for other nations. After the war, it was looked down on and pitied for its poor economy. France's economy had been completely crushed, with so many of their workers and such a large part of their general population being completely eliminated from the war. France struggled to return to their once prosperous state from the beginning of the century. Marcel Brabant wrote to the Times to raise awareness for the horrible state the people of France were in. "One cries for the work, but to provide work one must have money to buy tools, machines, and materials, and the unfortunate people have scarcely enough to buy food. What they want as well as money is sympathy and friendship." The people of France lost everything after the war and were longing for the sympathy of other nations to provide them food, money, or work. The majority of World War I was fought on French soil, causing the property and land of the nation to become extremely damaged. The property of France turned into ruin because barbed wire fence covered nearly 400 million square meters to a depth of over 1 meter. Over 330 million cubic meters of trenches needed to be filled in. Industry had been decimated, with 75% of French mines and 20,500 factories destroyed. Almost 2,000 settlements had been obliterated or badly damaged. No one saw France as beautiful as they did before the war. Even the Bishop of Chalons looked at the area and described a monochrome landscape without water, trees, people, or vegetation, which he called the corpse of a country. Following the war, all that remained of France was debris of a land that was once so gorgeous. A journalist visited Bethune, France, shortly after the war and explained, "It was not a bombarded town that I saw. It was a pile of smoking debris, a gigantic heap of rubble, where, in certain places, only pieces of walls stuck up, which reminded us strongly of the unbeatable spirit that was the remains of the town. Bethune is no more." After the war, France was a virtually treeless landscape of trenches, barbed wire, shell holes, concrete bunkers, unexploded ordnance, and the smell of dead whose bodies had been buried and disturbed in the continuation of war. In huge areas, the underlying rock had been brought to the surface and the topsoil blown away, making cultivation difficult. The beautiful towns and land of France were almost unrecognizable after the damage and destruction World War I brought. After World War I, the people of France completely changed direction in their views on politics, religion, and entertainment. Before World War I, French political life was characterized by an instability and polarization which infected virtually every aspect of the nation's culture. Ernest Renaud describes France's religious state, saying, "What happened in the 16th century is happening again today, for we are in the midst of a religious war." Battle lines were drawn up around a number of key figures over whom Catholics, Protestants, and freethinkers all struggled in an effort to discredit their opponents and consolidate their own place in civil society. France's political and religious standpoint had always been unstable and complicated. After the First World War, it became much worse, like a battle between every opposing side. Many people throughout France used the war as inspiration, and around 1916, a group of people met at the Caribet Voltaire in the capital of Switzerland, Zurich, and discussed their discontent with the war and came up with completely new ideas to be incorporated into the world of art. After the war, people would rely on movies to entertain them, which were also a part of 1920s French culture, a new phenomenon that, although usually the upper class could only afford to pursue, the people of France loved to dive into this new world. 1920s French silent films are among the more popular foreign films with classic love story settings. Although the war brought much grief and sadness, it also created a big culture change.